The moment everything changed. I still remember the moment I walked into the room. It was a cold evening in early spring, and the air felt thick with anticipation. My sister, Grace, was standing at the front, surrounded by fans, basking in the spotlight. But something about the energy felt off to me. It was like there was a hidden tension hanging in the air, something I couldn't quite place, but I knew was there. I watched her smile, so bright, so perfect, as she signed her latest book, a novel she'd worked on for years. This was her night, and she was glowing. She deserved it. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. I held a bouquet of white roses in my hands, the ones I'd picked up earlier at the grocery store, 3 hours ago. Grace's favorite flower. I'm not sure she even remembered telling me that when we were teenagers, but there I was, holding them tightly, as I watched her, waiting for a moment to catch her attention. She was telling someone in a purple cardigan about the joys of writing. She spoke confidently, like she had it all figured out. Writing is such a solitary pursuit, she said. You really have to have discipline, focus, the ability to see a project through from beginning to end. I nodded at the thought. I could relate. I'd done the same, maybe in a different way. But I wasn't here to talk about my work. I wasn't here for me. I was here for her. The thing is, Grace didn't know about my career. She didn't know about the interviews I'd rearranged or the column I'd delayed, just so I could show up here. Just to be there for her. She didn't know about my book, the one I'd written last year, the one that had just won the Pulitzer Prize. 3 months ago. I didn't tell her. I never had. Because every time I tried to share anything with her, every accomplishment, every step forward, it always ended the same way, her struggles, her triumphs, her challenges. I learned quickly that it was easier to let her believe I was still stuck. Easier than fighting for her recognition. Easier than seeing her diminish me time and again. I could feel the weight of it as I stood there, my flight back to DC leaving in just 4 hours. I'd pushed everything back to be here, to support her. To show up like family should. But when she looked over at me, when her eyes skated past mine like I was invisible, I felt it. Again. That cold understanding of who we were to each other. And then, just as I was about to retreat into the background, a man stood up at the back of the room. A man in a tweed jacket with the air of someone who had a lot to say. Does writing run in your family? He asked, looking at Grace. She smiled, radiant as ever, before her gaze slid over me like I wasn't even there. My sister can barely finish a grocery list without forgetting half the items, she said, the crowd laughing in that warm, knowing way that makes you feel like everyone's in on an inside joke. But it wasn't funny. It wasn't even close. I stood there, the flowers in my hand, feeling them grow heavy. What had I been thinking? What was I expecting? That these roses, this quiet support, would finally make a difference? I didn't need to tell her anything. Not anymore. But still, a part of me hoped. A part of me wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. I had to see it through. I had to. But just as I thought I might walk away, a different voice cut through the chatter. You won a Pulitzer Prize. The man pointed at me. The crowd fell silent. My sister's pen slipped from her hand, falling onto the table with a soft clatter. Her face drained of color as she stared at me, disbelief written all over her features. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. It wasn't about the prize. It was about everything that led to this moment, everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd hidden. But you can't understand that right away. To understand why my sister's eyes were wide with shock, to understand why she was trembling across from me, you need to go back. To when everything was still normal. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt overlooked, unnoticed, by someone who should have seen you? It's not easy. But you're not alone. Let's share our stories. And make sure to subscribe for more stories about standing your ground, finding your voice, and reclaiming your life. To understand the truth of what happened that night, you need to understand the years before it, the quiet, invisible years, when I was nothing but a shadow in the background of Grace's life. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when we were close, when she was my little sister, and I was her biggest fan. But over the years, something changed. It wasn't sudden. It was gradual, like the way the ocean erodes a rock, slowly wearing it down until one day, it's unrecognizable. I was 14 when I first decided to write. Not the kind of writing Grace did, fiction, full of complicated relationships and endless self-discovery. I wanted to write about real life. About truth. About the things most people would rather turn away from. I wanted to write about war, suffering, survival. The kind of things that didn't have easy answers or pretty conclusions. I remember telling Grace, her face scrunching up in that way it did when she was about to dismiss me. "That's so depressing," she said, already turning back to her notebook filled with her stories about misunderstood teenagers and lost loves. "Why would you want to write about sad things?" she asked. "Because they matter," I replied. "Because they're real." "Important is boring," she said, dismissing me, her words sharp and final. And that was that. I could feel a sharp sting in my chest as I walked away, but I tried to push it down. She was just a kid, I told myself. She didn't understand. But the truth was, it hurt. And it would hurt more as the years went on. Our mother always took Grace's side, as she always did. "Maybe you should try writing something more accessible, honey. Something people actually want to read." I felt the weight of her words, but I didn't argue. I just went to my room and kept writing. But every rejection letter, every moment of silence from my family, made me wonder if I was invisible. Maybe I wasn't meant to be heard. And yet, I kept going. Writing, relentlessly, like a person who had nothing to lose. I poured myself into my work, and over time, people began to listen. They wanted to read about the Marines I'd embedded within Afghanistan. About the translators who risked everything to help us. About the children growing up in war zones, still clinging to their humanity despite it all. They wanted the truth. But my family? They never seemed interested in my truth. Tell me if you've ever felt dismissed by the people who were supposed to support you the most. It's tough, I know. But you don't have to go through it alone. Drop a comment, and let's talk about how we can find strength in these moments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding your own voice. It wasn't just about the writing, not really. It was about the way my accomplishments seemed to vanish into thin air the moment I tried to share them with my family. The way Grace's success, her publishing journey, her book deals, her workshops, was celebrated as if it were the most important thing in the world. And mine? They were met with vague disinterest. I remember one family dinner, years ago. I'd just returned from my first deployment and had written an article for the Marine Corps Gazette. It was a thorough, unflinching piece about tactical failures in our sector. I was proud of it. It was raw, honest. A reflection of my commitment to the work I did. But at dinner, the conversation wasn't about that. Instead, it was about Grace's acceptance into a summer writing workshop. "That's great," I'd said, meaning it, of course. "Congratulations." "Oh, it's so competitive," our mother added, looking at me with that, "you get it, right, look. You have to have a certain level of talent to be accepted." I let my article sit quietly in my bag, unmentioned, and as the night went on, I could feel the weight of the silence grow between us. The truth was, I wasn't just invisible to Grace. I was invisible to all of them. Then, when I was 28, things still hadn't changed. I'd been promoted to captain and had written my first piece for the New York Times, a profile of female Marines serving in combat roles. The piece went viral, sparked congressional debates, and earned me my first journalism award. I called home to share the news. "That's nice, dear," my mother said, in that same flat tone. But before I could say anything more, she continued, "Grace just got her story accepted by Glimmer Train, a literary journal. Can you believe it? That's such a huge achievement." I stared at the phone. I could feel the words I wanted to say, wanted to shout, building up in my throat. But I didn't. Because what was the point? Instead, I told myself that maybe it was better this way. Better that she didn't know how hard I worked, how far I'd come. Maybe it was easier for her to think I was still struggling, still lost. It made everything simpler for her, even if it was a lie. Grace's success had always been easy to explain. She had the books, the literary accolades, the stories that people cared about. I had the military thing. The thing no one ever really understood. Have you ever had to watch someone else get the attention or praise you thought you deserved? It hurts, right? Drop a comment below and let's talk about those quiet moments of frustration and how we can turn them into motivation. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about reclaiming your space and your worth. The thing about being overlooked for so long is that you stop expecting anything different. Over the years, I learned to seek validation elsewhere, through my colleagues, my sources, my readers. The Marines who trusted me enough to tell their stories. The people who actually saw me. But no matter how much success I had, no matter how many awards or recognition I received, it still felt hollow when my family ignored it all. There was a moment, a few years ago, that stood out in my mind. I had just published my first book, a collection of war dispatches, which was critically acclaimed and commercially successful. It was featured on NPR, reviewed in the Washington Post, selected for multiple military reading lists. It was everything I'd worked for. Everything I'd sacrificed for. And yet, my mother never mentioned it once. Not even a word. But when Grace's blog was featured on a small literary website, we had a family dinner to celebrate. I flew in from Afghanistan for my father's birthday, and as I sat at that table, surrounded by people toasting Grace's online success, I felt a wave of something I couldn't name. Disappointment, maybe. Or exhaustion. To our writer, my father had said, raising his glass. I smiled, raising mine too, pretending it didn't hurt. But it did. Deep down, it felt like I was drowning in the silence they reserved for me. That night, as I drove back to my apartment, I told myself I didn't need their approval. I was fine. But the truth was, it still stung. A few years later, when I won the Pulitzer Prize for my book Blood and Ink, I thought, maybe this time they would finally see me. But when I called my mother to share the news, her response was lukewarm at best. "Oh, that's nice, honey," she said, her voice distant, flat. "Hold on, Deandra's here. She's meeting with her publisher tomorrow. Do you want to talk to her?" I was speechless. The Pulitzer. The biggest honor in my field, and it was met with nothing more than casual indifference. "It's a pretty big deal, Mom," I said, trying to make her understand. But she was already gone. And when Grace sent me her text days later, telling me about her book coming out in April, there were no congratulations, no acknowledgement of my achievement. Just a casual mention of her own event, as if it was her world that mattered most. I stared at that text for a long time, torn between the part of me that wanted to scream, and the part of me that had already given up on expecting anything from them. And still, despite everything, I replied, "I'll be there." I didn't know why I said it. Maybe it was out of some deep-rooted hope, buried beneath the years of rejection, that maybe things could be different. Maybe showing up for her, maybe being there would change something. But nothing did. Nothing ever did. The library's community room was exactly what Grace loved. Intimate. Literary. Full of people who took reading seriously. As I walked in, I felt the weight of years of silence between us. Grace was busy talking to the event coordinator, adjusting her book display, checking her author photo on the poster board. I stood back, holding the flowers I had picked for her, her favorite flowers, ones I had remembered, waiting for a moment to give them to her. But when she finally noticed me, her smile was brief. Distracted. "Oh, you came?" she said, like it was an afterthought. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course I came." She turned away quickly, already lost in the event. The room was filling with people, their eager faces already focused on her. They didn't see me. No one did. But that was fine. I didn't need them to. I didn't need anyone to see me anymore. Except maybe, just maybe, I still needed her to see me. I know this feeling all too well, the one where you try, and no one seems to notice your effort, your sacrifices. But don't lose hope. Share your story in the comments. I want to hear from you. And if you're not already subscribed, now is the time. Let's keep sharing, growing, and supporting each other. And then, everything changed. I stayed at the event, even after the awkwardness, even after the cold indifference that had settled between Grace and me for years. I stayed, hoping that something might shift, hoping that if I held on long enough, if I just kept showing up, she might see me. But I should have known better. It was during the Q&A session when a man in the back stood up. He was older, maybe in his 60s, with silver hair and a presence that demanded attention. He wasn't there for Grace. He was there for me. He looked around the room, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Your sister won a Pulitzer Prize," he said, pointing straight at me. The room went silent. Grace's pen slipped from her hand and clattered onto the table, the sound echoing in the quiet space. I saw her face, her expression morphing from confusion to disbelief, and then to something else, something raw. "She's the woman standing in the back with the flowers," he continued, his voice steady. "Tana Picket. She won the Pulitzer Prize for biography last March for her book Blood and Ink. The untold story of the Fallujah siege." Grace's mouth opened and closed. She was staring at me as if she'd just seen a ghost. "She's also a decorated Marine Corps colonel," the man added, his gaze turning cold as it shifted toward Grace. "One of the most respected war correspondents in the country. I served under her command in Iraq. She saved my life and the lives of 15 other Marines during the siege." The room was still. People's eyes shifted from me to Grace, then back again. The whispers began almost immediately. The words spread like wildfire, as if everyone were trying to process the reality of the situation. I stood there, my flowers wilting in my hands, and the strangest feeling washed over me. It wasn't pride. It wasn't joy. It was a quiet, bitter realization. I'd spent so many years trying to earn recognition from people who would never see me. I had worked harder than anyone would ever know, and in the end, they were still too blind to understand the magnitude of it. Grace stood frozen, her face pale. She hadn't moved. Her hand was still on the pen, trembling. The words that followed from her were barely audible. "You won a Pulitzer," she whispered. I didn't answer immediately. I didn't have to. She should have known. She could have known if she had ever bothered to ask. If she had ever cared enough to listen. "I did tell you," I said quietly, my voice cold. "I called Mom the day it was announced." "She told you?" "She said you won some award." "I thought I didn't know what it was," Grace said, her voice trailing off, an excuse that died on her lips. People were staring at us now, and I could feel the weight of their eyes, their judgment. But Grace didn't look at them. She just stared at me, her eyes wide, her body frozen. "I did tell you," I repeated, my voice a little firmer. "I told you about the Pulitzer." The room was buzzing now, the truth rippling through the crowd. People were pulling out their phones, searching for my name, for my book. Someone gasped. Another voice whispered, "It's true. She really did win." The whisper spread like wildfire, but none of it mattered anymore. The truth was out. I wasn't invisible anymore. And yet, the weight of it all felt hollow. Grace's apology came too late. Her tears, the sudden collapse of the perfect author persona she'd built, didn't change the years of neglect. She approached me slowly, her steps unsure. "Tana. I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I should have seen you. All this time, I should have seen you." I didn't know what to say. What could I say? She hadn't seen me when I needed her most. She hadn't seen the woman who had been fighting for her place in the world, against every odd and every dismissal. "I don't need you to fix it," I said quietly, the words heavier than I'd expected. "I just need you to see me. See the real me, not the version that fits your story." Grace nodded, her tears falling freely now, her shoulders shaking with the weight of it all. I will," she promised, but I could tell she was still processing everything. The truth had come out, and with it, the weight of years of pain. But the thing about truth is, it doesn't always set you free. Sometimes, it just leaves you standing there, holding something broken, wondering if it's too late to fix it. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Where the people you loved most couldn't see you for who you really were? Tell me your story in the comments. We're all in this together, and you're not alone in feeling invisible. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself, fighting for your place, and reclaiming your life.